Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today, and I got a fun one for you. This one is about my transformation from a dad bod to an IFBB Pro and how I did that over a 7 year period of time. It took something like that. 6 to 7 years, I think, is what the time I spent in the gym. Now, it's not like I didn't lift before. I had a serious relationship with the gym when I was a teenager. Started lifting, I think, around 16, 17, and lifted pretty consistently up until my early 30s. Maybe some small breaks here and there. And then I took 10 years off the gym and turned into complete mashed potatoes. No PEDs, no gym, nothing. Got back into the gym and started working hard again after a divorce. And started competing again in bodybuilding and worked my way from getting, I think, 5th or 4th place. I don't remember what it was out of 5 at my first show, up to winning an overall and a national title at Masters Nationals. I'm going to go through all the things that I did to get there, how I structured my diet, what my PEDs look like. Yes, shocker, PEDs. And I will also talk about my training and how my training had evolved to adapt as an older bodybuilder and still make progress in the gym. Before we dig into that, I want to tell you about my cycle cheat sheet, ultimate cycle cheat sheet. It is up on the Anabolic bodybuilding website for $30. It's a great bargain. It's 30 or so pages of information on the blast and cruise methodology that I use, and it has all of the other information that is helpful. It has profiles on various compounds. It has side effect mitigation, how to deal with side effects. It is very concise, simple, straightforward, not a ton of reading, not a dense reading. It's really just put together in a format almost like, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, but really just like a Cliff Notes that you can look at. If you want the deeper dive, we do have the Science of Anabolics and PEDs e-course you can go grab too. That's a much more robust and deep dive into anabolic pharmacology. But the cheat sheet is $30, simple, easy to understand. Grab it at the Anabolic Bodybuilding website. Link is in the video description below. Enough of that. Let's dig into how I went from dad bod to IFBB Pro. I'm going to talk through all that in just 1 second. All right, now I'm going to pull the curtain back. I know I've talked about this a few times before, but I figured I'd run an updated video. It's been almost a year since I won my pro card, and I want to discuss how I went from being a serious pudgy dad bod, as you can see in the before picture here, and how I went to an IFBB Pro in the after picture. I went from, I started off, I was kind of pudgy. I got fat in my 30s. I'd never been really like obese fat in my life until my 30s, and I just let myself go. It's the typical middle-aged shit, you have kids, you get a job, you just kind of forget about the gym. It's not like I woke up one day and said I wasn't going to work out anymore. I took a day off from the gym that turned into 10 years, turned into 3,650 days, and let my diet slide. And, you gain 5-10 pounds a year. And then over a 10-year period of time, you put on 50, 60, 70 pounds of fat. It doesn't take much. I mean, really, you gain a couple pounds over the holidays. You gain a couple pounds from summer barbecues and going overboard. And just not taking care of yourself, and I let myself slide. And the catalyst for me to get back into the gym was going through a divorce. I went through a divorce, and I'm like, well, shit, I need to look good for the ladies now. Honestly, that wasn't really why I did it. Of course, it was in the back of my mind, but I missed the gym. The gym was an important and big part of my life. And I kind of sacrificed that during my marriage, thinking that it was sort of silly to chase bodybuilding. I've always loved bodybuilding, and I've been a huge bodybuilding fan. And I was very, very obsessed with bodybuilding when I was younger. And then just sort of lost interest in it and focused on building business and other things. It's not like I completely stopped doing things. I still played basketball, rode a bike, did shit like that. It wasn't completely sedentary. I went to jujitsu, but I just got a little pudgy, typical dad bod shit. And I decided that I was going to get myself back in shape. Full disclosure. And I know there's going to be the bros out there like, but you use steroids. Yes, I did use steroids, and they work. They work really well if you're smart with them and you have genetics and work ethic. But I will also say this. I see tons of dudes that are on shit tons of gear and look like absolute dog shit. So it's more than just taking PEDs that puts the physique over the top. Yes, it is a part of the formula, but it is one piece of the puzzle that consists of many different pieces. And I also heard from many people that would say that you're crazy chasing that dream after 40, that you don't really grow much muscle after 40. There's certain ways you need to train. There's certain things that you need to do to grow. There's certain PEDs you have to take. This PED's weak, that, Primo's weak. Higher volume reps and reserve training doesn't work. You're not going to grow on that. You're working out 6-7 days a week. It's going to overtrain you. You can't grow from that. Carb cycling, eating too many carbs is going to make you fat. All these things that people said that didn't work. I clearly dialed it in and got it working for me and completely transformed my physique, my metabolism, my muscle mass, the whole thing. Now, when I got back into things, my very first show, I vastly over dieted. I mean, I'm talking about like I was just completely fucking emaciated. You can see here in this picture where I came down, I severely over dieted. I was a victim of my own work ethic. I think most people don't ever approach their limits of working hard enough. I wanted to prove something to myself and to everybody that told me that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do this thing that I wanted to do, bodybuilding. So my very first show back, I dieted down super fucking hard. I went balls to the wall after it, and I got down to 185 pounds at 6'2" tall. I'm a hair under 6'2". I'm like 6'1" 3/4", according to the NPC. So I'm technically in the 6'1" class for classic physique. But I severely over dieted. I did too much cardio, took too many fat burners, too much T3, dieted myself down, and I remember going in for a DEXA scan, and I think it read out at around 4%. And if you know anything about a DEXA scan, 4% is completely fucking emaciated. I looked like shit, I felt like shit, and I severely over dieted. But I think what I did by doing that is set myself up for this amazing rebound that I had afterwards. I had this just epic rebound post show where I put on like 50 pounds in a couple months, and it was not fat. You can see it. I progressed from show to show to show to show. When I moved up, my weight from show to show to show went up something like, I think 185, then I went up to like 220, then I went up to 238, and then when I won my pro card, I was 250 on stage. So from first show to pro card, which was over basically a 3.5-4 year period of time, something around there, I went from 185 up to 250 stage weight. And that's really the measurement of real progress. I hear guys all the time talking about, well, I put on 50 pounds. I'm like, yeah, but did you put on 50 pounds of real weight? You probably just got fat and bloated from taking D-Bull and Deca. That's what went on there. It's not like you really put on 50 pounds, but this was a legit I don't like 70 pounds, almost 70 pounds, 65, 70, I'm trying to do the math here. Yeah, 65 pounds of stage weight I put on in a 3-year period of time. And all this in my late 40s. I was 50 years old when I won my pro card. I did 2 national shows. I was in the over 40 class the year before. Just missed it by a smidge. One of my friends and clients, Juan Salmon, beat me. Juan is an incredible bodybuilder. He definitely deserved that. He beat me fair and square. Juan was fantastic at that show. But anyway, I knew I was close after that, so I went back and gave it another crack last year and won first in the super heavies at Masters Nationals, and then won the overall at Masters Nationals, which was honestly the first time I've ever won an overall in bodybuilding at a big show in my entire life. That was pretty cool as shit. A good one to win the overall in it. Anyway, but what I had to do, and this is a challenge as you're an aging bodybuilder with injuries, I've worked around all sorts of shit. I've had multiple surgeries during this time period too. I had an ACL tear. I had to have lymph nodes removed from my neck and a salivary gland from a tumor. I had to have just have my shoulder redone. I mean, there's been a bunch of setbacks. I had skin cancer and melanoma removed. I'm also a diabetic. I'm a type 1B diabetic, so I did all this while managing being a diabetic, which is a bit challenging. One of the values of being a diabetic is I can control my insulin to a certain degree, where that's going to be a little more difficult for a regular person to do. And I'm very aware of my blood glucose levels and have more control over that. But it also means being meticulous with things. You can't fuck off if you're eating a bunch of carbs. You got to weigh and measure everything and track your glucose meticulously if you want to make progress. Otherwise, you're just going to get fat. But what I really tried to do is focus in on the things that worked the best, that were going to optimize for me. And I think these are commonalities that a lot of older bodybuilders would probably share with me. And I am a critical thinker. I have a background in computer science. I worked in IT for years. I have a degree in computer science and data analytics. And I wanted to tear apart really what works on a practical level. I am a science guy at heart, but also sometimes people can get too much in the weeds with the science and miss the forest for the trees and miss what things that really work. And I try to look at past pro bodybuilders in not outliers, not the dudes like that one guy that trained weirdly and did a weird diet and had some success. I don't think that speaks for the whole of bodybuilding. I tried to look at everybody that, especially the guys not necessarily at the top of bodybuilding, but the guys maybe at the bottom half of bodybuilding, the dudes that had to scrape, claw, and fight their way to get pro cards. I wanted to know what those guys were doing. And I was a student of those people. And this is a crazy thing to me that nobody really takes the time to pay attention to any of that shit. They just completely ignore that. They get so caught up in studies and injection timing and, Primo versus Masteron and Pharma versus whatever generic GH. And they get caught up on shit that just doesn't really fucking matter. And they miss the forest for the trees completely. So I wanted to dissect and find out what these dudes were doing, what commonalities they all had and what worked, and I wanted to apply that to myself. And the conclusion that I came to is, and we had to think about this from the paradigm of an older bodybuilder and the constraints that we deal with as an older bodybuilder. Like, I can't go ape shit in the gym like you could when you're 21, 22, 23. When you're younger, doing heavy deadlifts, squats, barbell bench press, lifting like a power lifter or a CrossFitter was not going to work for me in my old body. Sure, you can try to do it, but usually you just end up hurt and banged up all the time. And if you're hurt and banged up all the time and you can only go after it, once or twice a month, that you're not going to progress that way. So you have to have some sort of training. This was the first thing the conclusion that I came to. I needed a sustainable form of training that was going to keep me in the gym, provide enough stimulus to allow me to grow effectively, without having injuries. So the cost versus benefit ratio had to be on point. I had to think about what the fatigue cost was of these exercises, what the injury risk was for these exercises, and choose exercises and routines that made sense to me. And for me, it was getting away from a lot of the big compound lifts that I was in love with when I was younger. Barbell squats, barbell benches, deadlifts, heavy rack pulls, heavy barbell rows, all these things that, everybody says are mandatory for bodybuilding. I got away from those things and put in mostly machines. I focused on mechanical tension, really trying to focus on mechanical tension. I kept a rep or two in the tank on everything and made sure my form was spot on, perfect with everything. And then I progressed those exercises. It's still progressive overload, even if you keep a rep or two in the tank. We were still progressing as we went. My main thing that if you want to grow in your 40s, I thought to myself, well, we have to have an environment that is going to allow us to stay injury-free for the most part. My shoulder has finally caught up with me. And that's just from years of wear and tear, and I think I actually fucked it up in jiu-jitsu a long time ago, and I've just done a good job of ignoring it until I couldn't ignore it anymore. But that eventually caught up with me. ACL tear was from playing basketball, and it was completely unrelated to the gym. So long story short, we want a sustainable form of training that is going to provide the adequate amount of stimulus to facilitate growth without completely smashing our body and ability to recover. So that was first point. Next point was the PEDs. PEDs work, but I think guys hit the PEDs incorrectly. I wanted to address multiple growth pathways. There's the androgen receptor, the traditional androgen receptor pathway. We have IGF-1, and we also have nutrient uptake and digestion and all these other things. So it was some pairing of testosterone with whatever anabolic you can tolerate. I personally like Primobolan. That's what I've run the majority of the time. I'm not saying I haven't run other things. I certainly have. But I would say 80% of the time, my primary anabolic on top of the testosterone has been Primobolan. I find that I tolerate Primobolan well. I find that Primobolan helps me manage my estrogen. My estrogen tends to run high, so Primobolan is perfect for me for estrogen management. It really just makes the testosterone shine better and allows you to run testosterone at higher doses. Primobolan on its own is probably pretty weak. I hear this whole Primobolan versus Masteron argument that, Primobolan sucks, Primobolan's weak. I don't know. I put on 70 pounds of stage weight with it. You tell me, does it look like it didn't work for me? I'm a Primobolan princess. I ran Primobolan and it worked just fine for me. And I've used Masteron. I've used other things. I've dabbled with other little things. And a lot of the stuff that people say that are mandatory, I pretty much have stayed away from, like orals. Didn't really run orals. I didn't run any exotic, weird, off-the-wall shit like DHB or Mint. It seems like the guys that don't make progress get obsessed with that kind of shit. My thought process was with the PEDs, and here's the thing with PEDs, to grow enough, to be big enough to be a pro bodybuilder, you need to be able to sustain this for a long period of time. It took me about 7 years to put on enough size to be a pro bodybuilder, and I need to be able to run PEDs that are well tolerated, allow me to run adequate doses that facilitate the type of growth that is necessary to be a pro, and on top of that, not get sick, not trash my blood work, not feel awful if you're getting sick, if you have to come off after 2 years because you've run crazy shit like DHB that's going to blow your liver values up, or blasted a shit ton of orals year round, or allowed your blood pressure and your lipids to get completely out of control. You're not going to be able to stay on long enough or be healthy enough to actually have any sufficient growth to be a professional bodybuilder. So that was the other part of the equation. That was the second part of the equation. And then third, a sustainable and manageable diet that I could do that would allow me to digest my food and grow. And what I found for me, the approach that worked well for me, and what I see that most top level bodybuilders do, if you look at most top level bodybuilders, they do some form of carb cycling. Caloric cycling essentially is what it is. They cycle their calories based on energy demand. They tend to run higher carbohydrate diets, lower fat diets, moderate to higher protein diets. And that seems to be a commonality that most bodybuilders have. Now, we need to be able to manage insulin sensitivity, especially with me. It's something that's very top of mind because I am a diabetic and I have to be very, very aware of my diet and manage it. I have been not great with it this past year since I got my pro card. I've been kind of shitty with my diet, and I let my A1C get a little too high, but it was better when I was bodybuilding. So that's a completely unrelated thing. So, I quickly determined that keto, carnivore, regular diets like that just do not work. You just can't accumulate. You have to eat carbohydrates if you want to get big. You just do. Carbohydrates activate certain growth pathways, increase mTOR, lower AMPK, increase IGF-1 production. You'll see it, dudes that are running keto or carnivore diets, they'll take GH and then they wonder why their IGF-1's low. You'll see it all the time. And then, just managing side effects, keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself in the gym, having a sustainable approach, and then just being consistent with everything. I preach this to young guys. This is a fucking grind. It looks like it was an overnight change that I had, but it just takes years and years and years of grinding and being consistent with your approach. When you're constantly changing your training program, when you're constantly changing your protocols, when you're constantly changing your diet, when you're constantly tweaking and experimenting with things, those people never take steps forward. They just don't. That's just what I hate to say it. I pretty much just found what worked for me. I found it out quickly. It's Occam's razor. I looked at it and these things are working well for the most people. Why don't we start there and then work our way out? If I'm an outlier, then I need to adjust for that, but I'm going to work towards the mean first and then, deal with little things as they pop up, and then mainly just be consistent and do the same thing over and over. I had a friend of mine who worked out with me, and he's like, Paul, do you ever change your exercise? It seems like you just do the same thing over and over. I'm like, dude, I've done the same workout for 7 years, pretty much. I almost never use a different machine. I almost never use a different exercise. I eat the same damn diet. I take the same PEDs. I just do it over and over and over and over again. Test, primo GH, insulin. I do a push-pull legs workout, a variation of it with small tweaks here and there, with a moderate volume, 6 days a week, and I eat a carb cycling diet, and I've done that for 7 years straight. That's really it, man. And just do that thing over and over and over and over and over again. And here's my thing. If you're making progress, if you're making incremental progress, why the fuck would you change anything? That's the thing that always baffles me with dudes is they get in their own heads. They chronically overthink things. They're trying to experiment, tweak constantly. And look, I love experimenting and trying new things, but it really just boils down to doing the fucking basics, just the boring basic shit over and over again, day in and day out. And what the things that have worked for the most people. You look at most pro bodybuilders, they all do the same shit. They eat some sort of, like I said, they all eat similar diets. They all train with either a bro split or push-pull legs with moderate to higher volume with varying intensities. But it's all progressive overload focused on mechanical tension. And then every dude takes a high test GH, whatever anabolic they can tolerate. Most pros you talk to, they either run an equipoise or Primobolan or Masteron, one of those three, usually. Sometimes they'll sprinkle in some other shit here and there, Tren, Deca, whatever. But for the most part, that's the core of their cycles. They run the same cycle over and over. They make sure they keep themselves healthy. They stay in the gym. They're consistent with everything. And they just do the same boring shit over and over, day in and day out, and they try to manage their health. That's another thing. You have to stay healthy enough, long enough, to be able to do this. And you have to manage your health. You have to take breaks here and there. You have to allow your body to recover. You have to stay on top of your blood work and blood markers and have a sustainable approach, because if you're trashing yourself and making yourself sick, you're not going to grow either or look good. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this one. It's really not rocket science. I wish I had some super secret inside thing for you. It's just do the basic boring shit, boring cycles, boring diets. You got to eat carbs, bros, for the keto bros. I'm sorry. I had somebody in the comments section the other day was mad at me. They said I always bash on keto. I actually have some of my clients that run low-carb diets. I'm not a one-size-fits-all. I just don't treat diet like a religion. I don't worship at the altar of carnivore, keto, whatever diet. I don't treat it like it's dogma. Same thing with training. Like I go with the stuff that makes the most sense, not the one that makes me feel a certain way. That's another thing, and just a little thing to leave you with. If you're letting your emotions drive your decision making in the gym and with your diet, if a certain thing makes you feel primal or more masculine, it's probably not the right thing to be doing. I'm not saying that you don't need to go hard. I train hard. I train consistently. But really, it's just using your head, doing the same boring shit over and over and over again. That's how you get to be successful in bodybuilding and advance your physique. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you, even the bros that leave shitty comments in my videos. I love you too. I know you probably need a hug more than anybody else does. Take care. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.